Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Irons match preview with myself and Sloth. Brentford at home, always a tricky game against Brentford. I always feel like they're one of those games where it's really hard to predict. Obviously, Thomas Frank's done a great job at Brentford so far in the Premier League since they returned to the top flight. And yeah, we're going to be breaking down what we can expect from this upcoming clash. Obviously, we want to get 3 points, and yeah, it's important now. We've got a few key players back for this game, hopefully, that we can push on and really have a strong end to the season over this next few months and give Graham Potter something to work with. But yeah, if you enjoyed the breakdown, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel as well. And yeah, before we get into the stats and the breakdown stuff, what have you made of Brentford so far this season under Thomas Frank? And yeah, they're kind of similar to us in that they've had quite a few injuries, but they've still managed to get quite a few good results along the way as well.
Yeah, I think they've been a joy to watch, really. I know they kind of fall under the trappings of, say, very direct. People kind of roll their eyes, I think, sometimes at how Thomas Frank can alternate between styles of play. But I think they've been a joy to watch, and they break so quickly with such quality creative players that I think they give anyone a game on their day. And I know that's a bit of a cliche, but I think with the level of quality that they have, they really can hurt any side. And they've struggled with injuries, much like ourselves, but I think they have had some outstanding performers. And whether it's Mbuemo, Wissa, who someone I'm a long-time fan of, or Mikkel Damsgaard, who this season has been absolutely sensational after a really tough period with injuries and his health. They look like building a bit of a footing, and hopefully for Brentford, taking a step forward as a side, and not only keeping Premier League status as they have done, maybe even trying to push up further.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think whenever we see, especially this season, we've seen a lot of, Thomas Frank behind the scenes, within the dressing room, whether that's after a defeat, after a win, how they analyze games. It's actually quite interesting, if anyone has seen those clips, to see the insight and the way Brentford use data. And, they're all about data, as are we on this channel. So it's quite interesting to see how they approach things when they're, analyzing matches or, looking ahead to games. But let's take a look at the tail of the tape of both West Ham and Brentford so far this season. So they've only got 4 more points than us. We've got 27. They're on 31. They've scored 13 more goals than West Ham, with 42 goals scored and 29 for West Ham. They've also conceded 42 goals. West Ham at 46 goals conceded. And we currently find ourselves in 15th, while Brentford find themselves just below mid-table in 11th. So when you look at this and then you compare it to the expected stats as well, you can kind of see that, both teams haven't been performing their best this season. Obviously, West Ham, we know about 24.79 expected points so far. Brentford's 30.63. Expected goals scored for Brentford and conceded is actually really similar to their actual stats. If I just take it back one here, Brentford 42 goals scored, 42 conceded. Their expected is 42.27 and 43.69. So they're kind of in line with their baseline of what they're expected to do. We're expected to score 34.39 so far this season. Expected goals conceded of 48.74, which is a couple higher than we actually have conceded, which is one of the worst in the division. And yeah, we're expected to be one place lower in 16th, and Brentford are expected to be a few positions lower than where they currently are in 14th. So Brentford, pretty, I would say, on par with where they probably should be in terms of the goals they've scored, the goals they've conceded, but they've maybe picked up a few points here and there that have put them above where they're expected to be. With West Ham, we're pretty much baseline of expected to be in a crap position, and we are in a crap position. And yeah, when we played Brentford last time, when we drew 1-1 away from home in this reverse fixture, it was a really strange game. And, obviously under Lopetegui, I think Souček was the one that rescued us a point on that day. A lot has changed at West Ham since then. How do we approach this one, Sloth, under Graham Potter? Because I'm hoping that we're going to have a few players back. It's rumoured that Todibo's back in training and could be back in the squad. Obviously, we've got Jared Bowen back. Lucas Paqueta as well should be back in for this one. I think there was one more. I can't remember who it was now. Obviously, Evan Ferguson as well. He'll be ready to play. So we've got quite a few key players coming back into the fold. How much of a boost is that for Graham Potter, and how does he look to integrate these players going into this Brentford game?
I think it's a massive boost for us just as a whole, going forward, if we can keep them fit. We've seen just how well some of the younger players have stepped in and covered, or, how, I say well, but how strong we have performed, not necessarily picked up points, but performed without some of the starters. And I think we kind of, looking at Brentford's stats, then the big difference between us is that they have been very clinical in front of, say clinical. They've scored a lot of goals. They've got goals across their attack. And, our only really reliable outlet has been Bowen. And him coming back, getting fitter, and, hopefully getting back on track or getting West Ham back on track for this season is so important for us, and it will inevitably get a reaction from everyone in the side if we can get him performing, and maybe even get Kudus performing to the level that we know he can perform at.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Let's take a look at Brentford's stats so far this season. Just a little bit of a recap of their current Premier League positioning. So yeah, as you said there, they've been very good going forward. So they've got the 7th best offensive record in the Premier League with 42 goals scored. And that's kind of in par. They're slightly above, but they've got the 8th best expected offensive record in the Premier League with 42.27 expected goals scored. However, on the other side of things, they have the 6th weakest defensive record in the Premier League with 42 goals conceded. Just for context, West Ham are one place below them with the 5th weakest. They rank 14th for expected points with 30.63. They average 1.75 goals per game and average 1.75 goals conceded per game, which is really interesting. So yeah, as you said, they're slightly overperforming their XG, and they're slightly getting away with some of the expected goals against that they're meant to be conceding. And when you look at the possession stats for Brentford, they're averaging around 48.69% possession in the Premier League so far this season. So, as you say there, they've been, really good going forwards despite the injuries. They've obviously got an abundance of quality in their squad slough. Obviously, one player that we have to talk about is Mbuemo. He's just absolutely outstanding. He was the player that we mentioned in the preview last time. We're obviously going to have to mention him again because he's such a danger on that right-hand side for Brentford. How impressive do you find him as a footballer? And, with no disrespect to Brentford, could he be looking to go to a bigger or a more challenging club than Brentford with the quality that he has?
I think he's fantastic, and I think he's the player that we really should have gone for above Mbuemo. Because they were there at the same time, and they were both performing incredibly well as part of that BMW attack with Mbuemo, Watkins, and Mbuemo. And I think he's got so much ability. It's not just the fact that he is skillful, he is direct, he will run at you. It's everything he brings to the game. It's his finishing, the work ethic, and the fact that I think you can depend on him for a moment of quality, and something that West Ham have in Jarrod Bowen, and will undoubtedly attract the attention of the top clubs. And I think, he seems to be getting linked with the likes of Newcastle quite often. And I think that link will only grow stronger in the summer, especially if he keeps up this level of performance. And, with all due respect to Brentford, it will be a very tough ask for them to keep a hold of him. And even potentially if we get ourselves back on track, he's someone that I would love us to take a look at if we can do that, and maybe even get some money for Kudus.
Yeah, 100%. He's got 14 goals, 3 assists so far in the Premier League this season from 24 appearances. That's ridiculous. Especially with, again, the level he's playing at. Again, it's no disrespect to Brentford, but they're not one of the top 6-7 as a West Ham. Like, we're in the same predicament. And he's definitely been the standout character for them. And with the injuries that they've got, he's been the one that Brentford will always look to make something happen or change a game for them in terms of their front line. So let's look at how both teams could potentially line up going into this one, Sloth. We'll start with West Ham on the left-hand side. We've obviously got a few players coming back. We'd expect Areola to stay in goal. Back 5 of Emerson, Kilman, Todibo, Kufau, and Wan-Bissaka. Midfield pivot of Souček and Alvarez. And then a front 3 of Paqueta, Kudus, Bowen. Do you see it being anything different from this? Obviously, we could maybe have Cresswell in the back three, Mavropanos, maybe Ferguson could make his debut. Soler as well could find a way into this team. Do you expect for us to see anything different to this lineup?
I would not be surprised if that's how we set up. I think maybe we could see Soufal dropped and Cresswell on that left side, and maybe Kilman moved more central. I think that could maybe be the one tweak. But I think one thing that you have to really, take into account is Brentford's pace on the break. And we're just looking at that attack now, and Sharda and Mbuemo and Wissa are flying machines. They are just bundles and bundles of pace. And we've talked for ages about how much we lack depth, quality and depth. Well, that's without Igor up top. Their big signing and record signing to come in. They've had to rely on their cover for the majority of the season. Well, almost all of the season. And it's come up trumps for them. They might not necessarily be where they wanted to at the start of the season because of that signing. But I think when you take that into account, it kind of really paints a positive picture for Brentford. And I think the biggest risk that they kind of pose us, that pace on the break. And Shardo, I think, is someone who is developing really rapidly. And he can frustrate in games, and sometimes his touch is not what it should be. But as we've said so many times, the pace will always get you. If he's running at you for 90 minutes and you've got tired legs, then he's gonna catch you out. And I think maybe that's what we'll look to cover with Cresswell. I know that sounds strange, but he has done really well recently in that left centre back spot. And I think Soufal has struggled, especially against pace.
Yeah, no, I do agree. And obviously, one thing as well to mention from Brentford's perspective, Lewis Potter's been playing left back in the past couple of games for Brentford. So, going forwards with him on the overlap of Sharda and Lewis Potter down that left hand side, it's pace, it's directness, it's danger. And then that's obviously going to create space from Mbuemo on the other side to drift into those pockets. And, as you mentioned before, this is a very dangerous striker and can be very clinical in those moments. So they have quality. They absolutely have quality. It's going to be really interesting to see how Brentford set up into this game, because we kind of know how Graham Potter's going to do it and what he's going to try and do and the areas of success we're going to try and get from this game. But in terms of Brentford, they have been quite flexible this season. It's very difficult to predict how they're going to play. On paper, it's a back four, but they've got potential to drop into a back three where they need to, expand with Lewis Potter as a wing back at times. And it's really going to be interesting to see how Thomas Frank does that, because, we're playing a back three ourselves. He may match that just because of the stylistically, he might want to close off some of those spaces. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. What's your feelings towards it, Sloth? We've obviously had Graham Potter now for 4, 5, 6 weeks as West Ham manager. We're still yet to see any groundbreaking progress, but there has been definitely a change and a shift in mentality, a shift in structure. Do you see us getting 3 points on the weekend against Brentford, or do you think maybe it's a test too far, too soon for Graham Potter and his side?
I think if you were to take into account how we played against Chelsea and some of the decisions that you could say went against us, I feel pretty positive going into it. I just think we look so much more well drilled. We look like we have a plan going into games and to set up defensively, and that is something we're going to need against that pace. So,
would you start Ferguson?
Personally, I would probably introduce him off the bench just because of those fitness concerns. But if he does start, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised, because he's a big physical presence with pace and ability to carry the ball that we have lacked. On top of Antonio, it's something that we've lacked the ability to finish. And I think if he gets 60 minutes under his belt, that's a massive positive for Potter going forward. But I can see him coming off the bench, to be honest. I do think that with Bowen back, it eases that pressure. Maybe we'll see Kudus on the right side, but you know, it's something that either way, I think we will get at them. I'm not necessarily confident we'll get a win, but going into games now, I feel so much more of a sense of confidence, or that something might happen just because we actually look like we take into account what the opposition do. And I just don't think we did under Lopetegui.
Yeah, I'm actually quietly confident for this one. I know, yeah, Brentford have had their ups and downs so far this season, and West Ham have definitely had their downs. But I'm just feel like, as you say, Bowen, Kudus, Paqueta, if that is the front three that we see, kind of in this structure, we haven't really seen. I don't think we've seen Graham Potter use that front three yet, because obviously Bowen was injured when he arrived. So yeah, I would just like to see that. We've obviously got Evan Ferguson now off the bench if we need to change a game, which is a massive difference to, say, bringing on someone like Danny Ings. So again, we've got that added additional bonus there. I just think we've got enough quality to really hurt Brentford in this game, but I also think Brentford could hurt us. Like it could completely go the other way. But I'm going to remain confident. I think 3-1. I think we beat them 4-2 at home. Was it last season? And yeah, I feel like we'll continue that good form and yeah, get a 3-1 win at home. But Stuff, what's your score prediction for this one?
I'm going to go 2-1 for West Ham. I do see Brentford scoring, maybe even going ahead, but
yeah,
I think we might just nick it. As I said, I've got quite a good feeling about West Ham at the moment, and either way, I expected an improvement in terms of performance from earlier in the season. So it's one that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm hoping to see. Yeah, I know we've only had one win under Graham Potter so far, and that was his first game against Fulham. But as you say, there's definitely been signs of improvement. We were close against Aston Villa in the league. Probably should have got a point at Chelsea away as well. So there's definitely clear improvements. And as the squad starts to get stronger, hopefully Todibo back in there, because I think he's going to suit how Graham Potter wants to play massively. As you said, Evan Ferguson getting minutes, and yeah, seeing Paqueta, Kudus, Bowen linking up again. There's a lot to be excited about going into. It's probably the first time in a while that I'm going to be going to the London Stadium looking forward to a West Ham game. It's been very rare this season, but this is probably one of those occasions. So going to enjoy that before the 90 minutes of football actually starts. But yeah, let us know down below in the comments. What are your score predictions? Are you as confident as Sloth and I? Do you feel like we can get the win against Brentford? And who would you like to see starting? What would your starting 11 be? Let us know down below. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for more content. And Sloth, until the next one.
Come on, you eyes.